Hey sports fans, are you ready for an exhilarating gaming experience? Introducing VIPclub.lv, your ultimate online sportsbook and casino. VIPclub.lv offers a vast selection of sports, from football and basketball to tennis and baseball. Bet on your favorite teams and enjoy the thrill of the game. But that's not all. Our state-of-the-art online casino offers a dazzling array of games, including slots, blackjack, roulette, and live dealer tables. Win big with their fantastic promotions, rewards, and exclusive offers. Join VIPclub.lv today and get a generous 200% match welcome bonus to start your winning streak. And make sure to use code ECSI at sign-up. Bet it, win it, and cash it at VIPclub.lv. Visit VIPclub.lv now and play responsibly. VIPclub.lv, your sportsbook and casino extravaganza. Must be 21 or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Visit gambleware.org for help.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's Friday, August 18th, 2023. The Dawg and Desperados, I think episode 4, Hall of Famer Shawn Childs. Going to discuss maybe an FFPC draft today, which is 1.5 points per catch for the tight end. So again, another different look from the NFFC and all the other big time drafts. I think there's $1 million on top here. So a lot of money to be had. A different look how in these drafts, the wide receiver slides, because obviously the tight ends get pushed up. And as it looked like, potentially in the NFFC, maybe the quarterback slide as well. Shout out to Joe Shea behind the glass doing all the great producing. Thank you, Joe, as you're wrapping up your summer to remember here at ECSI and the Dream Team. Shout out to VIPclub.lv, our sponsor for this show. When you go to the checkout window, use the promo code ECSI. Tell them JD sent you. And they'll take good care of you there. So without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only, the Hall of Famer, Mr. Shawn Childs.
Yeah, that Hall of Fame baseball thing, it's almost over. Got that one out maybe that saved the season. So you have an opinion. You just, when it goes sideways, you're just looking to break even. So I was hoping I would get half my money, but I got one ticket where I have a chance. So we'll see. We got to make the next round and have a chance at 75,000. So I keep telling my wife 10 more days to survive, and then we'll roll up our sleeve and take our chances.
Well, you always talk about survive in advance. It only takes that one ticket. Last year, it took to week 13 or something in DraftKings, and then thanks to Justin Fields and a few other cast of characters, that's all it takes is that 1 week. And that's the hard part for a lot of people in these lanes, whether it's, regular season grinding, the waiver wire, get to the dance, in the NFFC and the other big time contests. You got to get to the dance to have a chance at the big time cashes. And a lot of people don't have that mentality. For you in baseball this year, you put your hat on a lot of players, didn't come, you just, whether it was injuries, the pitching didn't work or whatever, but you're still standing with that one out to potentially at least save the season.
Yeah, Manoah was a crush me in the baseball season. I just had him a lot. I really was a top 5 pitcher in ERA. Pitched at Toronto, thought he would get wins. Thought his whip would be fine. Strikeouts had a chance to progress, but I don't know if it ends up being he was the pitch clock was his downfall or a lack of confidence. He's a big guy, and people want to say he's out of shape. I don't think that's the main factor, but he's back at AAA trying to solve his season. And fortunately for me, the team that I have in contention, I do not have him on. So it's a kind of a draft and best ball format with that you can pick 2 waiver wire periods. And, in any baseball or football league, you want to get to the end of the year with most of your players. And I think I got maybe 38 out of 42 players still can contribute. So, that's pretty good considering we haven't been able to pick up players since the beginning of June. And there's a lot of teams that kind of make it and you know, uh, don't have everybody there. So you actually want the people with injuries to have this period to do really well. And if they get in the top 20, they might not have all the bullets or the foundation to kind of, make that last ditch. But, in football, the trick for us in football is, you want to have a really good team to make the postseason, but you want to play your best ball late in the year. I don't want to have those 250-point games or 200-point weeks in week 7 or week 2 or whatever and get way out and feel like really good about it. I'd rather be just hanging around, make it, and then it clicks, 200, 170, because you really need it to happen late in the year. And that's what's different about baseball and football. Baseball, you climb the mountain in roto, and football is you make it, and then you hopefully you can add some pieces to make your teams better and then play your best ball at the end of the year.
And I don't think enough people realize outside looking in the work that it takes in football. Yeah, a lot of the baseball naysayers saying, well, geez, it's only, 14 weeks compared to 6 months. What your team, you take a snapshot of the team that you drafted and then take a snapshot in week 10, 11, and 12, and for the playoffs, and half the team could be gone, whether it's injuries didn't work out, you took swings, better options on the waiver wire. So as you're building that team, you want to gain momentum and almost, like that crescendo effect. For us in 17, it was comical because we're on the lid or near the lid for the classic, the 14 teamers. They had to beat 600 teams. So everyone gets a reset with, the percentage, if you averaged 170 points that year for each week and someone only finished, way behind. Well, if they averaged 150, they're only chasing 20 or 25 points in that 3 weeks. So my point here, Shawn, is we were near the lid on the classic. We were the hunted. In the online, 525 teams made the playoffs, the chase, the 3 weeks. We started like 348th. And that first week, Scott's sitting there going, Jeff, are you watching this? Are you watching this? Jeff, are you watching this? We put up 225 points the first week of the playoffs. And if I didn't last minute pull Cooper Kupp to add Josh Gordon, we would have put up 249 points the first week. And so it's amazing, as you said, get to the dance, have that 200, 225 week. What can happen?
And the most important probably thing about that is what you're saying is that you end up with Blake Bortles and these guys with these all-star quarterbacks that, the Breezes back in the day. And, you got Mahomes, Brady, and the guys that have, 300 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns and have the big games. But when you get over a short stretch, it's a great equalizer. Late in the year, the weather changes, more running, and the game kind of changes. And a quarterback off the pace can match the top quarterbacks. In that particular season, for those 3 games, Blake Bortles was the top quarterback and Ben Roethlisberger was the second one. And Roethlisberger was probably a top 8 or 9 quarterback that year, but he threw the ball a lot. So I had him a lot on teams as I drafted, and he kind of stuck with him, but I got the best play out of him. And you were able to identify a player off the waiver wire that had a chance to do something because you were in desperation mode. So, that's and that's even comes back to some of the team building when you take the quarterback early or you wait on a quarterback, you get those extra pieces to the puzzle. Probably the most, maybe not the most important piece to the puzzle that year, but the most important piece in week 16 was that Dion Lewis carry, rarely play him. But, everybody's short on New England. You slide him in your lineup and nobody else really has him in the finals. And he scores 32 points in week 16 that year. And he was a difference maker and shoved you over the top, especially in the online where it was a little more competitive. I think you had Kelsey in the other one where you had to really Russell Wilson, good foundation of other players, but, just it all changes and, you just got to get there. And then you need that great day to finish off for those championships.
I'm going to piggyback off of that. You draft a team, you like your team. You take swings. You think maybe this guy's going to be a slow starter. I want him for the second half of the year. Or if there's an injury, he's going to get moved right into the lead spot, and therefore I have another player to add. You've told me since day one, the least amount of decisions that you have to make, the better, the less mistakes you're going to make. I mean, play your studs. That's what you've always taught me here. And there's only one guy where you would always question, am I playing him or am I not playing him, Shawn? And that's when you went up against Revis Island.
Yeah, it's probably. I would say that in looking back on the Wyckoff day, one of the guys that won it, he nailed the first eight picks. I think his eighth pick was like Hushman Azada, whatever year that was. Those 8 picks carried him the whole year. He had no decisions, and he won the overall. So in fantasy football, you really only have to get 7 or 8 picks right and get some complementary pieces from like round 9 to 12 for the bye weeks and cover you and get you to the postseason. But if you can nail, get the couple breakout players and your studs live up to what they're supposed to be, your quarterback does what you want, and then they all play well at the end of the year, you don't have any decisions and you can end up with a great team. And that's what's probably the best attraction to fantasy football, is because you or me, we could do, hours and months of research and put it in. And a guy could say, all right, hey, Shawn, you write the stuff. I'm going to take the cheat sheet. Don't even care what I do, draft a team, and things break for him. Like a Jim Crowley guy back in the Mitchell's day, he just had a touchdown, didn't do the work, but liked to play. And he could get it right. And you don't have to be a great manager, and you just, it just broke well for you that year, and you got all the pieces, and you have all the skin and the excitement in the game, but you might not be back for 10 years, so it's just, it's part of the fun of the game. And, no matter what opinion you have, it doesn't mean you're going to be the greatest in the world this particular season.
And going to the waiver wire, where in the NFFC it's Wednesday, and because of COVID now we have it at Saturday. They also changed the kick-in, where you used to have to individually take the kicker. Now you get the team kicker. So again, I'm a Justin Tucker fan. So you just hit Baltimore. If Tucker goes down, at least you have a kicker for that week there. But my question to you on the waiver wire, where I think as teams don't get off early, they tend to get a little lazy, and you'll see the bulk of people get in on Wednesdays, but they forget about the Saturdays, where you can go in and cherry pick, and instead of having to break the budget on your $1,000, you can go in and add some pizzas for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, that's the part of the grind of the game. And I would say that probably I don't want to be grinded on Saturday night, that second version. I have to pay attention to it. And if I have to manage 50 teams, there's going to be things I'm going to say. The best thing that for me when I do that is I look at the waiver wire on Thursday when I'm setting my lineup, and I look who's dropped. So if something got missed on that day, I will most likely, if it's a key player identifiable, I will put it in, address that right then if I have a need or a spot for them. So I'm kind of looking at it then. But then we always got that late Friday practice or something changes, where somebody's, name arises that you don't expect. And, you can get him that week for $3 or $2 or even $1. But the following week after the game, he might go 200 especially if it's a running back or something like that. So you can save yourself a lot of money by being more efficient, but you have to grind it and put in your time. And that's the challenge of balancing real life and fantasy football.
Last year, you identified the Dallas defense. Hats off there. As I said, I've always been a Tucker fan. There were a couple, if you didn't get Tucker, Kansas City until last year, Butker was a great ad. And then obviously you have the Las Vegas kicker and the Cincinnati kicker. And then after that, some people will lean to Atlanta and Koo. Some people will go to dome kickers, et cetera, et cetera. On the defensive side, we'll go back. I know he's not watching, but go back to the glory days with Dennis Fisher and the Raiders, the 3 hot weeks in that defense carrying you. I've seen Green Bay get hot late. what's your thought process as you're building your team and drafting on the kickers and on the defenses? I know a lot of times most people will just sit and wait. The old days, your last two pick was a kicker and a defense. Now there's a lot more strategies. If you want to take a Tucker, set it and forget it. You're going to play him every week, and you're not going to drop him on his bye week. You're just going to add someone for that 1 week, and the same with defenses.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because even Tucker has been a really good kicker. In the last couple of years, I don't think he's been his best at the end of the year, and that's partly because Lamar's been hurt. But when you're looking at the kicker, ideally you would, if a team plays well on defense, right, their kicker potentially is going to get a lot more chances. They're going to play ahead in games. They're going to get late field goals in the second half. So those drives where they're playing the backup players, they only need field goals. They're up 34-7 or 34-10. They're trying to kill the clock. So that is helpful. You don't want to look at like the Lions. They run the ball pretty well. San Francisco run the ball well. So when they get in close, even Atlanta this year, the Atlanta's kicker is pretty popular, and he does make most of the hits, and he's kind of come on lately. But when they get in close, they're going to probably finish off drives with touchdowns, especially inside the 10-yard line. So you're kind of looking for that balance of what offense can score, or can I pair them up for the defense? And I think when we had even the daily game, and when you had kickers in defense, you don't have that anymore. Pairing a kicker with the defense kind of made sense sometimes. So rather than handicapping both separately, you just paired them together. And then we had one big day when we did that, when I believe it was the Rams defense, and they were playing Oakland one thing. So we had the lead Trey Mason and the kicker and the defense for the Rams, and they just blew out the Raiders, and all those pieces came in. So, but the dynamic is kind of different. But when you play matchups, you're going to get some right, you're going to get some wrong, but you also have to manage a waiver wire, invest, free agent dollars, and invest time. Kind of get to a kicker. And most important thing probably about the kicker, when you're gone, if you like it or not, are they making the field goals when they get the chances? If they're missing some, you kind of have to move on. And we do kind of gravitate to the kickers that can make those long range kicks that really get the big scores. Really, really good in the home league when we used to do it, and they used to get like 15 or 20 points because it was different. It was an event, but that's a whole different story. But,
and of course, last Saturday, Tucker from 60 right before the half, dead center. You're giving up. I took Tucker 14-1 on Wednesday. Could have had the Dallas D. And I took a swing on Nathaniel Dell. I knew he wouldn't make it back to me. So, again, just on a 350 OC. So, again, I'll be sitting there all year, looking at Dell, probably not starting him, obviously, initially, versus the Dallas D. So I'll be splitting hairs there. But it is interesting. I want to give a quick shout out to Connor McLaren, who's always here. Thank you, Connor, for all the trust and support. Mr. Randy Miller has a question for you. Thank you, Randy. Saquon or Bijan in a PPR?
Can we get both? Can we end up with both in the team? I have taken in the best ball formats that I have taken that combination and at the back end more than anything else. I have both of those players. There's a lot to like about both of them. And it depends on the format. So sometimes one of them will slide in the second round. So if you want to go 1-1 and you had to take one, I kind of actually think Saquon should be the first one to go. But in the high stakes market, Bijan goes first. But in the FFWC I did last night, Bijan was make it to the second round where Barkley's going different. And even this draft, Bijan went earlier than Barkley. So I would probably personally take Bijan first and be greedy, hoping if I was at 10 or 11 that I might get both. And because if I'm okay with the wide receivers. So it really depends on the format, but I think Barkley, for me, I trust him a little bit more, but I really like the upside of Bijan. And like I said, I do have that combination more than anything else in the best ball.
Connor says, kickers in the home leagues are always a ride. Dan Bailey was the heart and soul of my squad for years. Hey, listen, I made a lot of money with Dan Bailey, so good eyes there, Connor, definitely. Before we get into this draft, last night, Philly and Cleveland, the rumors Deshaun is not progressing as we thought. And then, I wanted to ask you this question because it was brought up again, social media. It doesn't mean shit. Everyone's an expert, even though they haven't done the work, a lot of these guys. A guy that we had in diapers a few years ago, I had Trey Sermon in every draft when he was drafted from Ohio State to the 49ers, and it plug and play into that system. And obviously didn't pan out, gets hurt, hangs around. Philly picks him up late last year, fourth on the depth chart behind Scott. Rumor has it it's Scott versus Sermon. Winner stays, loser moves on. I caught a tweet, which I found kind of interesting, Shawn, where potentially Philly could cut and save some dollars Rashard Penny. So they'd be wheeling out a Swift. They'd be wheeling out a Gainwell would move to 2. Maybe Sermon would be your change of pace back. And then Scott would hold on. Any all of a sudden love for Sermon? Are you worried with that crowded backfield? On Wednesday, I got Swift at 8-1, and they gifted me Gainwell at 9-12. So I had, I at least covered my ass a little there. I think Gainwell's the safest of Penny and Swift because of injuries and past history. But what's your thoughts of that Philly backfield?
Well, we got a couple of years ago, Sermon was, San Francisco, high volume running team. And he was the guy that got drafted the highest. And we thought he would kind of do something. And he kind of really never materialized. And Elijah Mitchell kind of got the late steam. They talk about an undrafted free agent. And he's the guy that kind of emerged. And Sermon just had his chances and he didn't capitalize and do it. But we viewed him as a talented player and that would have upside. So, last year they get McCaffrey, things change. He gets shipped out to Philadelphia. I was doing something, earlier today on handcuffs of, the best value handcuff running back, and I have not finished it, but, I was talking about a different player, but I wrote a little section on, Sermon makes a lot of sense to be in the backup for Penny. I think Penny is a really good player when he's healthy. He kind of does what Philly wants. And I think Sermon makes a lot of sense as his handcuff, whereas Gainwell is the handcuff to Swift. So I think Boston Scott's been pretty good in his career. He kind of really helped him out, and he's been a bridge player for them. But how many people are going to fight for him on the waiver wire where Sermon might get picked up somewhere? So I think that Sermon for now could be, if you draft Penny and you're in that, especially if you're bare at Philly running back, that you could take a flyer and put him on your team as a backup. And let's just see what happens the first couple of weeks. Not really a target fight for, but, the lead runner there is going to get plenty of chances. And we know Swift has been banged up in his career. Gainwell is capable of doing some stuff, especially, they put him in the 5-yard line and he runs them in rather than catches them. And you think he's going to be the pass catcher, but he steals from the other running back. But it's a really good offense, and the running back is going to have some games.
Randy asks, and first, thank you for your answer on the first question. Diggs or St. Brown?
Boy, that's a lot closer than you think. I think I was thinking about it the other day when I was like, when Diggs was at Minnesota, he kind of had the kind of similar profile as, St. Brown, where he kind of had a lot of catches, didn't make a lot of big plays. And then he went to Buffalo and he was able to, stretch the field, better offense. And St. Brown's kind of fits that mold where gets a ton of passes, but he only gains 10.5 yards per catch, 11 yards. And he's missing that next dimension to put him with the elite receivers, even though he's a phenomenal catching the ball and he gets open. And the trick is, does he get enough touchdowns? So I would say that Diggs has the advantage because of the better quarterback and stuff like that and higher scoring offense. But I think St. Brown has a chance to match him in catches and probably not get as many yards. So I do like St. Brown a lot. It's got the little ankle issue as a factor. I'd still probably take Diggs, even though I really, like I said earlier, I really kind of feel as though St. Brown, I want him as my second receiver, wide receiver, and I want to have that other guy in front of me that can score potentially double-digit touchdowns and make big plays. But St. Brown, his win would be if he catches 125 passes and he just gains a little bit more, and then they don't really have anybody else, and he does get number. And so I like him, but I lean slightly to Diggs. But if you took St. Brown, I have nothing, no complaints about it.
And it's funny watching some of the NFFC drafts. I'm seeing St. Brown get moved into the first round. I've seen him go as early as 8, and I'm scratching my head because what you just said makes so much sense to me. Where a CeeDee Lamb or Diggs with the St. Brown, I'm breathing a lot easier because 100+ catches for St. Brown as long as he stays healthy. The Jamison Williams, I'm putting 4 letters next to his name. BUST. If it's not a hammy, if it's not gambling, it's always something with him. The addition to Gibbs there, I'm staying far, far away. They brought back the Fossil, who has had success over there, to come on back, Marvin Jones and a couple other players. So they got, I'm staying far, far away from the Jameson there. We actually have a trade question from Sam Lilly. Here you go, Mr. Childs. Would you trade Kels and Mike Williams for Waller, Devontae Adams, and Drake London?
Waller, Drake,
Devontae, and Drake.
It's a keeper league most likely. So I would say that is it a keeper league? Does he answer that?
Sam, if it's a keeper league, again, so this is more of a quality versus quantity. Kels is such a separator. On Sports Map Radio Monday night it was. I talked to a beat writer from the Giants. He said, Jeff, big if we know with Waller stays healthy, going to be an integral and huge force into their offense. You know my thoughts on Drake London. I know your thoughts with how many passes are out there. And Devontae Adams nicked up, doesn't want to be there. Jimmy G. I probably would lean Waller, Adams, and London for the upside, but when you let one of those big, it is not, he says, it is not a keeper. You're giving up a big cog there with Kels.
Yeah, Kels is clearly an edge, and then you can get a wide receiver that's closer to London in a draft or even on his team. Like, realistically, when you're viewing, the best advice is when you're doing this trade, right? And especially if somebody's going to offer you a 3-to-1 trade, is like, okay.
Well, it's 3-2. He's getting Big Mike, which we know how many games is Big Mike going to play.
No, but what is his other player on his team that he has to play? Like, is he replacing London and Adams and he's sitting, Addison or something? What is that player that gets pushed down out of his lineup? Or if you're picking up on the waiver wire, they'll give you 3-for-1 and there's 2 good players because it's a 10-team league on the waiver wire. You have to include what the potential of the other 2 players or the other players to equalize the trade. In this case, it would be 1, or the value of that player. So you have the advantage. With Kelsey, I would probably stick to my guns there. But, it's Williams is kind of a risk reward player with, the injury. But, if it's a 10-team league, it makes a lot of difference because I expect his depth to be a lot better than that. And in London, he has upside, but, I would think that dead even he would outperform. So it's close. And I guess London's the kicker because, when you think Adams and Waller and then Williams and thing, those are the kind of the.
He does add here, he says, unfortunately, Mike Williams currently is his number 2, but my flex is Gibbs. So I'd only be starting Adams and Waller. So he's adding Adams and Waller. He already has Gibbs. So he's cutting Kels. And he'll be upgrading with Adams and Waller, and London will be on the bench.
I would typically keep Kelsey and see how it goes, and then see if his other things materialize, and try to, we don't want to give like those difference maker players away if possible. And where Kelsey is such an advantage, and especially the size of the league is a factor, and the strength of ownership in the league is a factor. So I would probably keep, Waller still has to do it. You know what you're getting with Kelsey. You're getting a wide receiver 1 playing tight end. He could go sideways or something like that. You can always improve on Mike Williams in a different way. A really good receiver, what if Adams starts off slow, misses some time or something like that? You might have somebody that's hot. And Gibbs is going to be a great play at the flex position. So I would hold off, even though it is intriguing.
And I'll piggyback here. And if Stu Bunting is listening to this, we're going to go way, way, way back to our home leagues. I was on the lid and I was looking to strengthen my team. I was that one piece away. He had Chris Carter, and I offered him 3, 4, and 5 players that were just on my bench that would have started for him. And that would have been the one piece to send me to the promised land. So be very, very careful, guys. Just updated. Maybe this helps you, Sean. Carlos Correa is going to start today. I don't know if that means anything to you.
We broke
up. Okay. The quality versus quantity. So again, when you're giving up, we use the word edge here, Sam and everyone else. When you can create an edge, you want to stay on the edge, and you don't want to now. It looks good because you're moving in. Hey, I got Devontae Adams. Well, the sizzle versus the steak. It's not Devontae Adams with Rodgers. It's not Kumbaya holding hands. He's not happy in Vegas right now. Now he's nicked up. We know how many games, or do we not know how many games Jimmy G's going to start? So you're kind of taking your one piece with Kels that you're starting every week other than his bye week. Stick and keep Mr. Kels, Mr. Childs says. Look at this, 32 minutes in. We haven't even got to what we're going to talk to today. So, okay. One last question from Sam. And here's, I guess, I want to see where this guy is falling, because this guy, I always say very simply, if you didn't invite me to the wedding, don't expect me at the funeral. The number one back, or one of the top backs last year, Josh Jacobs, now sitting far, far away from camp, could have signed for $10 million. Is he going to hold out and be that guy? We don't know. I think he'll be there at camp, very simply. He wants to know your thoughts on Josh Jacobs.
I think that you have to draft accordingly where you avoid having him in the equation if you would think about drafting him. I think that the potential's there, and he could be very good, but he had exceeded all expectations last year, and he was underdrafted. He was kind of a discount, but he had 400 touches last year. He's holding out. He wants a contract. Makes a lot of sense. The NFL doesn't pay these guys, and you get the reason why, but he's going to be the poster boy and try to hold out. The problem is they hold out. They invite some injury risk. I mean, his stats look sensational. When he's looking at the third round, you feel like, oh, I got 2 wide receivers, or I'm chasing a player. It feels so good when you get him, but he has a high risk of failure because of the two things, the decline from a big season and the risk of a potential hammy or a soft tissue issue from not fully practicing. So if you draft a running back in the first 2 rounds or something like that with a receiver, and he gets there, you're more apt to, especially in a PPR format, to gravitate towards another wide receiver, or maybe Gibbs or Etienne or something like that. So I was already having him in my fade category before any of this stuff happened. I thought he would he would probably get drafted, close to the first round. But now he's going in the third round, and you think value. So right now, hands off. I have not drafted him. I don't want him. But if he reports to camp and all things are positive in 2 weeks and he moves up 12 spots, that's a whole different discussion for me. So right now, I will not get myself in a position where I take him, and I just move right past him. I don't want no part of him. And I've drafted those best balls 300 teams and passed them.
Well, and I had to span the globe here looking 11-1 from one of our good friends and colleagues, Nelson, took Zamir White, who's just sitting there. I mean, he's the next guy up. So technically, Sam said he got him third in his draft. If you're drafting Jacobs and they're giving you, Zamir White, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever it is, I think you nailed it, though. This usually happens when they hold out this long. They rush back to camp. They get ready for the first game, and next thing you know, they pull a hammy or something, and they're done for the rest of the year. They're never healthy.
Yeah, and that's the trick. Even Zamir White, I mean, I guess in the, because I was doing the best balls, and you put him in there, you don't want to get burnt where, where Jacobs returns and he has really no value. But in, when you're doing like the punt the RB2 situation and you're taking a flyer, he makes sense. And he tends to go a lot later. So he's, Zamir White, actually, we thought he would be better last year and steal some of Jacobs' touches, but, he didn't, because Jacobs played so well. So, possible flyer there, but definitely interesting dilemma. And one, it's more of a gamble. If you got one swing and you want to go for the upside, that's fine. If you got a lot of teams, you can kind of fade them and get your shares late if you feel as though that he's going to be okay.
Give everyone what company this is for, a quick on the scoring, and then seeing that we're already almost 40 minutes in, maybe we'll allow you just to take this over and then go through some teams or thought processes. Again, when we're in these drafts, some people, this is their first draft. Some of the people, this is their 50th, their 75th draft. These guys have been drafting since May and June. Way back in the day, the trendsetters, I was a part of it to start. We started the name of the company, the name of the draft, Trendsetters. We were drafting on Super Bowl Sunday. It was a slow draft to kind of set the ADPs in our thought process as the Super Bowl was going. So for someone that just jumps in at a crack at 500,000 or a million, their first swing versus someone that's got, 25, 50, 75 of these in, formulating the thought process. Do you let the draft come to you, or do you try to make a statement, yada, yada, yada? But give us the skinny on what this draft is, the top prize, the scoring, and then you can take it from there.
Yeah, the Fantasy Football Players Championship is, kind of, took over after the Wyckoff and kind of merged, and they're actually the biggest high stake event as far as volume of their main event. So it's $1 million for first prize. It's 4 point for passing touchdowns, 1.5 for PPR for tight ends. That really kind of adds a weird dynamic to the team, because people will value the tight ends more, but they'll overvalue them at some point. So is Kelsey that big of an edge? Sure. And so you got to kind of intake all that stuff. But in this format, the trick is their rules are really a little different for the playoffs. So in order to make the championship round to win $1 million, you got to have most points or best record. If you were third and fourth in your league, you have to win your way in your league championships, which get run on weeks 13 and 14. So if you win week 13, you go to the finals on week 14, and you got to win to make it. So actually, they maybe put the third, you could be the third place team. I'm not 100%. They might have changed that, but anyways, I think you still have to win it. I'd have to go black. It's, you forget in a year. But anyways, the problem with that is, week 13 and 14 are bye weeks, and you could have a great team, and you got to kind of, week 13, there's a lot of good players on week 13, and you got to be careful not to, you could get away with one of them. If you win your league and you run away with it and you're already in, that's fine. But if you need those players to kind of beat the other team, it can be a challenge, and it's something that should be corrected. But for whatever reason, this contest doesn't want to do it. And then the other flaw that they had is that they, when they extended the football season, we kind of added the all play at the beginning of the year. So they added, 2 all plays like everybody else, like the NFFC. But then they had last year, or the 2 years ago, they had to add that third one. The problem is that they slipped their third one in like week 6, which was a bye week. So now you got another all play when teams have some players off. That's kind of a disadvantage too. So I don't know if they change it, because I haven't looked at the rules. My first draft for them will probably be next week. So, you have to look at those, those little bit of rules. And when you're drafting, and kind of understand, okay, if I don't have the greatest team, how many of those week 13 or 14 players do I want to put on, and can I survive? But, if you get it right and you do survive, I think Philly's one of the teams that Philly is week.
I know Chicago's 13, Philly's 10.
Yeah. So okay. So Minnesota's 13.
Yes.
Fields is 13. But so like if you end up with like that, a great player or something like that, you don't want to sit. You don't want to be playing if you've got a win to go in. But you're not going to pass on Jefferson because he's week 13. But
Buffalo is 13, Shawn.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so that's a factor. And just in the top of your head, I know people will take Allen like he's whatever, but his schedule late in the year, I think he's got New England at home, and I think he has Dallas one of those games. So in the other ones, okay, but he doesn't have the greatest schedule. So schedule is a factor here. So you got a bye week, and he's got a tough schedule. It's kind of a should you really fade him in this contest, but whatever. So, but anyways. As far as the draft, I mean, do you have any questions about the format or anything before
No.
Yeah. So as far as the draft, it's pretty normal for the first round or so. And then they, like we can see in this draft that Hawkinson and Andrews, get pumped up there. The trick is when you're taking, say, a Hawkinson, and he had a really good year last year. So he was became probably I think he scored 200 points in the PPR league, 201 around there. So if he had 80 catches, now he's worth 240 points. You would have to think that Waddle is probably a higher player than that, or potential, or at least be even. So what happens is it makes these tight ends in the secondary range, as long as Kelsey doesn't have that monster year again, it puts him in the same equation as a wide receiver. Now you are gaining an advantage at tight end, but you're passing on an advantage at wide receiver. But in the bottom line is you could be taking a 240-point player at wide receiver or a 240-point player at tight end. So as the secondary market of the tight end, so even like Schultz in the 9th round, now he played for Dallas last year, maybe 65 catches. He was missed a little time in the beginning, but say he was 65, 700 and scored 5 touchdowns. So now he's going to get 100 points for the catches, 16, so he's going to be a 200-point player, so now that tight end is worth 200 points. Is Elijah Moore, is Zay Flowers, is Traylon Burks, or even the backup running backs, are they going to be worth 200 points? And this is all speculating of the players doing what they're supposed to. So the trick is, to understand what the options are at both, and don't be the guy that kind of takes the tight end above players that have higher potential. So last year, actually, the tight ends really kind of dropped off. They've fallen off. We've got, Evan Ingram and some other players that had better years. So they kind of pushed up. Like Dallas, love him for what, his potential and what he could do. But he's only scored 4, he averages 6 targets a game. He's in a great offense. And I think that in the 4th round, that's kind of too high for me. I still want to build a foundation and stuff like that of my team. Even Waller switching teams, when he was with the Raiders, it was fine, 90 catches and 1,100 yards. He goes to the Giants. Giants are going to throw the ball probably 100 times less. Is he worth that? I would my projections, or at least when I do them, I can switch and I have them projected for this format, so I can have that mental comparison of at least fantasy points. So that is the reaction, is that people want to push him up. But realistically, the mid-range of some of those players at running back and wide receiver will be higher, but you got to be able to understand the back end of the player pool. So that's kind of the quick observation of some of the dynamics in the drafts. Anything on so far, Jeff?
No, I was just actually looking at Team 2. And again, I don't play this contest. I understand the playoffs. I understand the format and everything. I understand the edge at Kels. I'm a big Devontae Smith guy. He got the hookup with Hurts, and he doubles down and gets Goddard. So maybe, again, added hookup. I'm a huge fan of Ayuk. Take the darts with Sanders, Pacheco, Gainwell, Achane, who I really like. But now looking, Jamison Williams out 6 weeks. Justin Ross already banged up, Rich James. My point is, as you're building this team, is this a 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receivers, and like 3 flexes, or how's that work?
This has 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flexes. So I've been saying this for Greg Ambrosius from the NFFC for a while, is that the dual flexes is a progression of the game, and the FFPC was ahead of the curve on this. And what happens is if you have an injury at wide receiver in a normal format, you kind of get punished, because you potentially could have 4 good running backs on your team, or it could have 5 because you did really good and you built your depth, or you mined the waiver wire. So now you could end up with a good player that you can't get in your lineup. By having the dual flexes, you have the opportunity to overcome some of that. And what it does is it creates a lot more variance in drafts, because some people want to be running back strong. Some people will take the tight ends in this, and some people will take the wide receivers, same in the other formats. But in this, when you're saying like the team 2, some teams will actually bang out 3 tight ends and they'll want to play them. But when you play those 3 tight ends, they damn sure better be guys that are going to get well over 200 points. And that's the trick there. So in this case, the team went with a double tight ends, and you could see, his running back position is not as strong, but he only has to start Devontae Adams and Ayuk. So he's going to see, play. He's going to have to overlap and play one of 3 running backs in the flex, and he's going to have a tight end in the flex. So did he get enough visually on the draft at running back to be a competitive team? I mean, the 3 Philly players are really exciting, especially when you consider they got a really good schedule at the end of the year, and Kelsey's impactful. But it will be a challenge managing the thing, like we said earlier. He's going to have multiple decisions at running backs to play. It can lead to mistakes. And then did he get enough wide receivers to even be in the equation to be in that decision? And I don't know if I see enough on this team. We got Williams, like you said, out 6 games. Hodgins from the Giants, played pretty well last year. He's going to be trusted. Ricky James, kind of a extra person at Kansas City, potentially in the raw. So he took 2 flyers at Kansas City. But so there's going to be some management issues with this team. Like I said, and that's what ends up happening is if you don't get the right running backs and wide receivers, if you got a different running, like I said, and then he takes a quarterback early. So I don't want to get too involved in, draft strategy because we're going long, but that's the things you have to kind of work through when in the decision making when you're building your teams.
With all the moves, 1.5 tight end, double flex, is this something for you when you dive in, you're going to let the draft come to you, or do you already have, formulated, ideas depending on where you're drafting? I've known you long enough where I know that you sometimes especially these settings, that you're going to sit back and build that core with wide receivers and running backs. You're potentially not going to jump a tight end. You'll let one of them slide to you, and maybe even in the quarterback situation as well.
Yeah, I would think that because I'm probably end up doing so many of these, I will be flexible and maybe be a little different on some of them. And I know you've seen a couple of your drafts from the NFFC. If the back end, it's kind of weird. You get this mental picture of the back end of the NFFC because it flips. So you get a little better options in the 3-4. So, but I think that you can build a team from the back end well in all formats, even with the 3RR. And I think the NFFC, with the changing of player pool, that the advantage was actually to the front. But if some of like Javonte Williams and a couple other running backs and a couple other key players start to move up in drafts that people are leaning on it to help their team, if they move up, it flips. So it goes back to where in the NFFC, the back end becomes favorable in the mid-range. In this particular case, it probably will be relatively fair all the way through it because people will push up the tight ends and the quarterbacks. So there's going to be some, decision making and team structure. But typically, I would probably try to come out of it, 2 and 2 to keep my options open, identify a value quarterback, and try to get, I'm gonna bet my opinion. I've done a ton of research. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I understand it, but I don't want to have every team look exactly the same. And that's what, the diversity will become from picking from pick 1 or 4 or 7 or, 11. So, when you're picking at different ranges, at least the starts of your team are different. And then you might gravitate to the players you like a little bit later on.
What you just said, I don't want to confuse anyone with flip-flop and NFFC and to this draft here, because I think you're 1,000% spot on with the Dalvin Cook signing. with the Ezekiel Elliott signing. I was in the one hole on Wednesday, and I'll just say this: that 3-4 turn is cluttered. Gibbs didn't make it to me. He was one pick before me, but you're with the ETN, the Javonte Williams, the Ramondre Stevenson, the Josh Jacobs, the Najee Harris. So they're all that green in that corner. So I'm thinking now the next couple of drafts I'm going to pick from the back, and because you're getting 12, you're getting 13, and you're getting 25, and that 4-5 turn now is a lot better than what you're staring at the 3-4 turn right now in the NFFC.
Yeah, and that's the difference. And like I said, and this one will probably won't. It's hard for it to have a total flip in dynamics because of the variance of the drafts, the drafters. And I would say this about this contest, right? We play in a lot of these events, right? And you can say, all right, there's $1 million, all right. You compete for a big prize, and it's really difficult. But the thing that is helpful, and we fall, and when we're playing fantasy baseball and football, especially in fantasy baseball, is that when you have a group of people that you kind of know everybody in the draft and they're really good players, the drafts run more true, but they become more difficult. When you get this thing, there'll be more variance, but you might end up with 3 or 4 teams that are kind of, they do, one team a year, or they come off the street. They don't follow the ADPs, and it's going to be a little more wild card, but they end up, I don't want to say softer, but they end up being different, and you can kind of accomplish what you want easily. And I think that's what when you get the bigger the prize and the wider the contest, it's going to be more difficult to win it. But you in a regular league format, you might have a chance to win your league at a higher rate than you would against tougher opponents that are kind of like really hardcore people. And that's what you see when you see these draft boards. They're different. And you're like, oh, I really love that team. I really hate that team. But you look at another one on the same draft position, they can't even get the same players and like a different format, because everybody evaluates it different and their draft flows are different.
And I think that's a good point because, for $350 to get a chance at $1 million, how much actually, is this a 350?
This one is a 350, and I think they're giving them a million for this as well. But their main event is $1 million this year. They both pushed them up. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't followed it. I haven't done one yet, and I am drafting 8 main events for this for Kimra. So I will, I have to get my hands dirty. So I need to do one of the, one or two of the 350s just to get my head wrapped around what I want to do, the draft flows, what players are they moving up, which are moving down. And they're going to be a natural parallel to the other events in that. But, it's just where I want to kind of decide I want to take an advantage somewhere, and hopefully those players pan out.
I'm going to flip-flop for you because we're getting close to the hour here. I want to ask you a question. I'm going to go back to the NFFC. Let me see something here. We missed a few questions. Who is the guys is going to be the Brock? Sam, this is probably he might have left the building by now. Sam wanted to know who the guys are going to be the Broncos' best running back this year. I know you're in on Javonte Williams. I am too. Earlier this year, I was making sure I got P. Ryan. He's rose up the boards. I've backed off P. Ryan a little now. I do have some Javonte shares. Thoughts in Denver at the running back situation?
It's pretty much been a shove fest for me on Javonte. It's kind of, I think he's got 11 months. He's going to be ready for week 1. He hasn't gone on the field. We haven't seen him. He's coming off an injury. We saw Dobbins struggle out of the gate, and we saw Breece Hall. They don't know. So that, they're kind of shying away from the injury. And I'm usually injury adverse, but for some reason, I just feel like he's worked hard and he's going to be ready. He's a pass catching back. The second running back is okay, just not a great, not somebody where you think it's going to be a 50-50 split in any situation. I think that Williams, if he's healthy, he's going to get, 60%, maybe 65% of both, potentially. The ties to Peyton, Sean Payton as the head coach, and their philosophy and the way they use the running backs in New Orleans is really a positive for me. Williams caught 43 passes in the rookie season. So there's really a lot to like there. I think it's where he was going and where they were giving him to you, and the options that were going in front of him. Like, Madison getting drafted in front of him in Porter Williams. Like to me, that's a mistake. What is Madison? He's ran 3.8 yards per carry, 3 point whatever, 6.5 yards a catch over his last 200 catch. I would never take him. I love Walker. Just don't think he catches enough balls. James Cook, you're betting on the come. So there's reasons behind all these situations, and we don't have enough time to go in it, but that's a different stove. But Williams, I'm taking. But what happens now is, like you said earlier, that P. Ryan in this particular case is going in the 10th. Now, this team end up having Kittle. He's got a tight end that he can lean on, but he went for the upside second tight end to play in his lineup. Well, he could have got the handcuff right there at a reasonable price. And I most likely in this team would have probably gravitated to that. But, so then he would have taken 5 backs, which is fine. He could have got another serviceable tight end unless, in his mind, I like Okonkwo and I think that he could break out and he can be helpful. So I can't kick the decision making, but I might have handcuffed, my number 2 running back in this situation. But those are the dynamics. So, can they get wide enough and stuff like that? So I'm a Williams guy this year.
I'm going to ask you an NFFC question as we slowly wrap this up here. I'm thinking from the back, and I know I have not had success here. Okay, so let's just say you're picking from the 10 hole. So you got 10, 14, and 27 or whatever. My math's probably off there. Chubb, Saquon, Bijan, Chubb. And then the 3RR allows you to get a T. Higgins or a Ridley versus a CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, and AJ Brown, St. Brown, or a Garrett Wilson with a CD or a Diggs. You understand the double wides, and then you can grab a Gibbs there, or you could even grab a Ridley as your 3 or a CD. On paper, the 3 wides, if I'm wheeling out CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, and Ridley or Judy at the 3, I'd be like, guys, come catch me. Because I know at the 4-5 turn, I'm going to have 1 or 2 backs there that I easily can put my hat on. But can you formulate a Bijan Hunt, a Saquon Hunt, and then taking it from there and still compete with that kind of firepower?
Yeah, I mean, it really, like, they're really so all at the end of this from say 10 to 12, the options at wide receiver and running back are really, really strong. And you can go any direction. I think that you're coming out of the third, you're going to get the advantage. Now you get down to the trap of the 4-5 in, coming back. So those are reverses on because I'm looking at this draft board, but it changes the dynamic. So the wide receivers in that round kind of drop off. So, do you want to end up with, where is it? It's, DJ Moore, Hopkins, Ayuk. Like, do you want to move them up 4th round, or are the running backs are ETN, Breece Hall coming off an injury, but most likely going to go a lot later. So I think the decisions are different there. But you most likely, if you're going to go take 3 wides, you're mostly going to move the backs you want if you want to be 3 and 2. If you feel like you need a quarterback in the NFFC, you might need to get in and out because they go kind of fast. So it's really, I think when you look at most teams from the first 6 rounds, they're in the game. It's just a matter of they put themselves in position to capitalize, to finish in their roster. And that's the trick. And there's not really any real answers. It's just opinions, because the names, like I said, the names don't necessarily, you think they're going to be the best, but they still have to produce on the field. It's the stats that win the game.
Well, we just did an hour with our eyes closed. So the thought process is that we'll double up again next week. We'll obviously keep the Friday show at 1:00. I'd like to get at least 1, if not 2, maybe throughout the week, break down some more drafts as you're going along in your Underdog, your DraftKings, your RT Sports, your FFPC, yada, yada, yada. Also, we'll have another weekend of games being played this weekend. 2 games tonight. Carolina at the Giants, Cincinnati at Atlanta. Update some injuries, update some movements in the ADPs, pros and cons, and we can go from there. But the scroll has been going the whole time. Sean, tell them where they can find all your work and what you got going on.
Yeah, you can find me at Twitter at Shawn_Childs. My content gets placed on Full Time Fantasy, and I also have a separate site where I started this year to try to build a secondary market, fantasyanalyst.substack.com. There's a ton of information. There's 160,000 words of content. There's all the projections, and I update them once a week. And also, if somebody wants to, we're reviewing this draft. I did a draft yesterday, a review of the FFWC, the Fantasy Football World Championship, where I literally talked about 144 players for an hour and 40 minutes in it. And it kind of gives you a good profile of it. That's why I didn't want to kind of overlap like this. There's only so much time that we can do it. So if somebody wants to read that, that's up on the site somewhere or on Twitter, you can find it. I posted it. You just have to, it's on, you'll get to loot, you don't have to be paying for the site or anything, but you can get to YouTube and signed it. So, but that's a pretty good thing. And it probably makes sense to maybe do it in another, maybe not as depth, but another format like the NFFC or something, just to be a comparable, because the decision making and the team builds are different, depending on the game style.
All right, so we'll be on at least twice next week, maybe 3 times. We're getting closer. We got to keep Shawn busy and active because he'll be tiptoeing out to Vegas soon to compete in some of the high stakes drafts as well. So a shout out to Sam Lilly, Randy Miller, Connor, everyone else here watching and viewing, asking questions. That's what we're here for. We're here to educate with a little entertainment. We save the entertainment for that 4-letter word that starts with an E and ends with an N. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, from the one and only Hall of Famer, Mr. Shawn Childs at Shawn_Childs. Go get his work also at Full Time Fantasy. Wish everyone a great weekend. It's here. Draft away. Ask away. We'll see you soon.